Speaker.
I call Jonathan Naylor. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was so wrapped up in that, I thought it was going to keep on going forever. Well, Mr. Speaker, as the member so rightly pointed out, this was my first budget that I've been able to participate in, and it's certainly been a great experience. And last week, when we went into urgency, again, the first time that I'd been in the House when we'd had urgency, and I had a member opposite sort of smugly come up to me and say, "I think we're enjoying this more than you guys." And I couldn't help but thinking, actually, every minute that we were here during urgency was a minute we were getting closer to passing really, really good legislation that was going to help this country, was going to benefit New Zealanders, and it was certainly an exciting time. And I thought I would rather be in the shoes where we knew what the outcome was going to be, and the outcome was going to be positive, rather than being a little bit cocky about how long the process could be drawn out. But, Mr. Speaker, turning to this sort of roughly 15 hours, we're getting to the conclusion now of this budget debate. I guess from the other side of the House, I've expected something different. I've expected to hear alternative plans. I've expected to hear alternative options. I've expected to hear alternatives in some respect. And maybe that's a little naivety on my part for it being the first time I've heard. But, Mr. Speaker, I've heard nothing. I've heard dwelling on the past, as the previous speakers just said, about what had happened in Labour governments gone by, of which she wasn't actually a member anyway herself. But yeah, we've heard all this kind of talk about what's been done in the past, but we've heard no alternatives. All we've heard, Mr. Speaker, from the other side is a couple of things. Firstly, claims that there's going to be a new capital gains tax. Well, Mr. Speaker, we all know that there is nothing new about the capital gains tax. That's always been there, and all we've announced is that we're going to get better at catching out those speculators. So, Mr. Speaker, it's not a new tax. And the other thing that we've heard, everything we've heard from the other side is people getting really, really excited about whether or not we have met our surplus targets this year. It's basically just about every speaker that's got up. It's all they've managed to talk about. And I want to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, something that the Honourable Nick Smith referred to in his speech. And he did a bit of an analysis of the last 20 years' budgets. And on average, each of those predictions of every Minister of Finance, on average, they were 4% out in their calculations when they were looking at it going forward. Mr. Speaker, this year, it looks like we're going to be 1.4% out. So on that basis, you could argue, Mr. Speaker, we're going to see, Mr. Speaker, we can draw from that this Minister of Finance is doing a better job than any of the other Ministers of Finance that we've had in the last 20 years. But of course, Mr. Speaker, you don't simply measure the success of a budget on surplus or not getting surplus by a small margin. You might measure it about whether the country is experiencing economic growth, whether or not there are jobs being created, and whether or not there are other factors being achieved, like the decrease that we're seeing in ACC that's being planned. So, Mr. Speaker, what we've seen from the other side of the House is a complete fixation with money. Well, Mr. Speaker, we're fixated on this side of the House with the people of New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, we are focused on ensuring that we are taking people off welfare and into work. Mr. Speaker, that we are raising academic achievement and that we are investing where it's going to make the biggest difference. And so we're going to be putting that package in that so many people have talked about to increase benefits for families with children in them. What we know is that 2/3 of children who are experiencing material and hardship are in families where they are on a benefit. And, Mr. Speaker, we're not just leaving it at that. There is also going to be an increase for those people who are working with the families. We're going to see an increase to the childcare subsidy, which is going to make it easier for people to be able to go out and get more work if they need that work to make ends meet for their families. But we've got to remember that these are the new announcements, and they ride on the back of everything else that this government has been talking about over the last little while. And let's not forget that this is in this context. It's in the context of also, over the last little while, of increasing parental leave to 16 weeks. It's in the context of us making GP visits available to under 13s for free. It's in the context of the Home Start package, which means that younger people in particular who are buying their first homes will be able to access more money through their KiwiSaver contributions, and also all the other contributions that have been made to their KiwiSaver to get into their first home. It's in the context of us increasing the immunisation rates amongst our young children. It's in the context of us having warmed up 300,000 homes, and it's in the context of us seeing ECE participation going up. That's the kind of commitment that this government has had to families in New Zealand, and this budget is in the context of that and is simply adding to the great work that has already been achieved. But this budget, Mr. Speaker, is not simply about welfare. It's not simply about what we're doing directly for children and for families who are experiencing hardship. It's a well-rounded budget. It's one that is committed to the regions, and we're seeing that through the $25 million that's been set aside to establish new regional research institutions. And I can tell you that living in Palmerston North, the benefit that those types of institutions bring to a place are incredible, because you have money coming in which is actually multiplied. You have people who are working in those areas who are often well qualified and well paid, who then contribute, and well educated too, I might add, who are contributing positively to our communities. And so there's a flow-on effect from that. So we're going to see more of those being established in New Zealand. We're seeing an increased contribution to the ultra-fast broadband rollout. And again, in Palmerston North, I can say we're currently the third fastest community in New Zealand to uptake the ultra-fast broadband to the home. And I was speaking to a business recently who was doing international IT work with all sorts of people from the big manufacturers of hardware to people like Google, working with DreamWorks and all sorts of places like that. They can do that because of the connectivity they have. And when their staff members need to work from home, they can do that because the ultra-fast broadband is available to them. That's what these kinds of things can deliver for New Zealand. That's the kind of process that we are working on with these types of initiatives. We're seeing a further $80 million going into research and development. And we all know, Mr. Speaker, that if we're going to move ahead, if the economy is going to move ahead, we need to continue to be more innovative. We need to ensure that those companies who are on the edge of that innovation are getting the assistance they need, and that is what we're doing. Again, Mr. Speaker, in my hometown of Palmerston North, we see the impact of that research and development funding going not just to the institutions, but also to private businesses. Mr. Speaker, as I said, it's a well-rounded budget. We've got the help for the families. We've got help in terms of promoting economic growth. And of course, the very big thing that New Zealand has faced over the last little while has been the rebuild of Christchurch. And this budget continues to invest in the rebuild of Christchurch. Last Friday, I was fortunate enough to be in Christchurch and witness firsthand some of the great work that is being done down there by Sarah and the things that are being achieved there. What we're seeing now is, despite the fact that Christchurch has had such a devastating last few years, what we're seeing now grow up out of the ruins is what is going to be a state-of-the-art city, something that the people of Christchurch can be proud of, something that the people of New Zealand can be proud of, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to rise up from the rubble, so to speak, and that's the kind of commitment that we have had going forward. So in summary, Mr. Speaker, I just want to add up that I believe this is a balanced budget. It's a budget that is working towards great things for all of New Zealand. It's going to target those people who need our help the most and ensure they get it. We're not simply going to talk about what has been done in the past. We are looking forward. We are looking forward to seeing New Zealand have a future. We're looking forward to seeing people come out of poverty into work and make their own way in the world. And we're looking forward to an ongoing, growing economy here in New Zealand as a result of the great work by this Minister of Finance with this budget. Thank you.